In 1984, the pages of 2000 AD were dominated by gun-toting lawmen, radioactive mutants, and heavy metal war robots. But then two creators decided to do something completely radical. They gave us a protagonist who wasn't a hero, had no superpowers, didn't want to save the world, just simply wanted to get out of where she was. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're doing a deep dive into the Ballad of Halo Jones, Alan Moore and Ian Gibson's masterpiece that ran from progs 376 through to 466. We'll break down how this revolutionary strip was developed and walk through books 1, 2, and 3 and explore the tragic rights dispute that left one of comics' greatest epics permanently unfinished. So quick note guys, I'll try and avoid spoilers. Quick note guys, that I'll try and avoid any massive spoilers to those of you who haven't read Halo Jones yet. So we break down each volume with the main plot points in it, but it'll be more like here's what you have to look forward to when reading, if you haven't gotten to it yet. So by 1984, Alan Moore was already rapidly establishing himself as one of the powerhouses in modern comics. He was a standout writer for 2000 AD and other British publications like Warrior, Marvel UK, and he had penned hits like Skiz, DR and Quinch, and a bunch of Future Shocks for 2000 AD by that stage. He'd also done a bunch of backup stories for Star Wars Weekly, Doctor Who Weekly, and having worked with under editor Des Skin for those weekly reprint magazines that needed original strips in the back end, that's how he went on to Warrior. For the 2000 AD work that he was doing, he was tired of the publisher's reliance on male-dominated, ultra-violent, macho heroes. Moore wanted to write an ordinary female character in a futuristic world. Someone who was not a sex object, a sidekick, or a badass warrior, but just a regular teenager living in a realistic sci-fi slum. He teamed up with artist Ian Gibson, whose fluid line work, intricate world building, and expressive character designs gave the strip its unique soul. Now, I was lucky enough to have had some correspondences with Ian in the last few years before his death. And you know, very, very nice man, but just such a unique voice, unique style, and such a unique, brilliant approach to the art that paired up with Moore. It's just one of those once-in-a-lifetime things, similar to Kev O'Neill on League of Extraordinary Gentlemen with Moore, and Kev also, Kev Whit Mills on Martial Law, on Nemesis the Warlock. I mean, the list is endless. The Ballad of Halo Jones officially debuted in Prague 376 in July 1984 and ran across 3 distinct story arcs, ending in Prague 466 in April 1986. Book 1 is Escaping the Hoop. This introduces us to 18-year-old Halo Jones living in the 50th century on the Hoop, a floating ring-shaped ghetto anchored off the east coast of America. Book 1 is deceptively simple. It covers a single day where Halo and her friends go on a shopping trip. But through Moore's world building and Gibson's dense art, we learn about a terrifyingly mundane future filled with crushing unemployment, bizarre youth subcultures like the Different Drummers, and casual violence. The tone shifts dramatically when one of Halo's friends is murdered in a meaningless mugging. Realizing that staying on the Hoop means slowly dying inside, Halo buys a ticket to leave Earth on a luxury liner, setting up the stage for Book 2. Book 2 is where Halo is they didn't have official titles for the books, so we're just going to call them the key incidents. So Book 2 is Stewardess on the Clara Pandi. This is a space liner, and This picked up 18 months after book 1. Halo is working as a low-level stewardess aboard the Clara Pandi, a sleek interstellar cruiser. Here the story expands into cosmic dark comedy and tragedy. Halo makes a friend and fellow stewardess, Rodis, and also encounters Toby. There's a lot more to Toby than you think. He's an interesting robot dog who had an interesting fixation on Halo's former roommate, Ludi. Toby, I won't go into details here, but we do see Halo in some interesting situations and how she ends up in a desperate fight for survival. But once again, at the end of this book, Halo is left utterly alone and steps out into deep space, not knowing where she's going next. Book 3 is probably the most acclaimed. The other two are good. This one is probably the most drama and the most intense moments in it, as well as the much more complex, detailed storyline. And a lot of this is testament to just how much Moore had grown in such a short space of time, as was evident from his leaps on strips in Warrior, like Marvel Man, later Miracle Man, and V for Vendetta, and then his American work on Swamp Thing, leading into Watchmen a little bit after this, but which he'd already started working on. We'll get out of the way the fact that a lot of this was influenced by Joe Haldeman's The Forever War. I'll include a link to that if you want to see the certain scenes and the gravity and the aging, there's a lot of things in it, but Moore's never shied away from the fact that, you know, he's good at taking influence. Skiz was basically E.T. but transposed to Birmingham. So there is definite elements here that you might recognize if you're familiar with The Forever War, but it doesn't take anything away from the brilliance of the characters in here, and it certainly takes a completely different route to how we see Halo's interactions in this with both the other members of the platoon she signs up with and the romance that she has with a general. If books 1 and 2 were about escaping, book 3 is about surviving. It's widely considered one of the greatest military sci-fi stories ever put in comics. Destitute and out of options, Halo enlists in the army and gets dragged into the Tarantula War, a brutal, senseless interstellar conflict fought on bizarre alien worlds like Moab. Moore uses book 3 as a blistering critique of war. Gibson's art shifts from quirky sci-fi to stark, claustrophobic nightmare fuel. Gibson's always had that in his art, great diversity, but he had definitely shifted from a much more grittier, detailed approach to a much more fluid line work that he used in especially the later Robo Hunter stories and even book 2 of Halo Jones. There's elements here, and some of his covers are just gorgeous, illustrations of Halo and the other characters, but definitely he can bring that dark, gritty realism right into it when the script requires it. Halo loses a lot of people in this, so it does deal with a lot of loss again, and we're seeing that. By the end of book 3, Halo is transformed from an innocent teenager into a cold, battle-hardened veteran. Realizing she's been used as a pawn, I won't ruin what happens at the end here and why it happens, but she does take off again, flying into the unknown, her future uncertain. Now, unfortunately, it ends there. It wasn't supposed to. So book 3 did end with a tease of a greater legend. Halo was destined to become a historical figure, a space pirate, and an old woman looking back on a life that changed the galaxy. So why did it stop at book 3? Alan Moore originally planned 9 books for Halo Jones. His outline would have tracked her life through her 20s, her 30s, and her 40s, showing her time as a musician, a pirate, and eventually an elder stateswoman of the galaxy. However, in the mid-1980s, Moore got into a few different intellectual property disputes, one of which was with IPC, the parent company of 2000 AD. Now, the same thing happened, it happened with a lot of different companies because the comics industry was still mired in very old and very unfair copyright practices, and hence why Moore and Frank Miller were involved with the Jack Kirby battle for art, and I've done a video on that as well if you want to check it out. But needless to say, in protest of not being able to have the rights to Halo Jones or a more fair copyright system, Moore walked away from 2000 AD entirely, vowing never to write another page of Halo Jones unless he owned the character. Now, Ian Gibson, for his part, could have continued on with another writer, but he did refuse when this was offered to him, out of respect for Moore, but also unfortunately leaving the Ballad of Halo Jones permanently frozen at the end of book 3. So even though we only got 1/3 of her story, the Ballad of Halo Jones remains a towering achievement of British comics. It proved that sci-fi didn't need laser guns and muscle-bound heroes in every page to be captivating. It just needed a little bit of heart, ground-level humanity, and some brilliant storytelling. What's your favorite moment from Halo Jones, those of you who have read it or are familiar with her story? Do you think it works better ending on a cliffhanger, or do you wish Moore had finished all 9 books? Let's chat in the comments. But don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and as always, take care of yourselves and hope to see you again soon. Thanks, guys.